Hello everyone, I hope you're doing alright. Today we're talking about the Kinetic Combat Shadow, the tank that can be a little punishing if you don't know what you're doing, but once you figure it out, it's pretty straightforward. Alright. Disclaimer as usual, I'm not an expert on this stuff, I'm just a nerd, I play a lot of SWTOR. If there's anything that I missed, leave them down in the comments below. I'm sure your fellow players will appreciate it. Tertiary stats, very quickly. In PvE, go shield from like 5 to 6,000 and then throw everything else into absorb. It kind of depends on what gear you get to drop. And then for PvP, just slap a shield on and then throw literally everything else into crit and you should be ready to rock and roll. For our tacticals, all the tanking tacticals are good for us. The most general purpose ones are 2 cloaks, which is really helpful for getting the extra stacks of resiliency, and the Friend of the Force, which is very nice, say if you're doing like, a Nim Nephra, perchance, and you want to apply a cleanse to a friend or just help them survive AoE, it's very helpful. If you don't have any tacticals yet, you probably have a Life Warden laying around somewhere. Just slap that on for now and you should be ready to rock and roll. Alright? For your legendaries, Force Resistance is fantastic. It's a flat 3% DR. Very, very nice. I personally like to run the Dynamic Force package. It's going to give us a flat 5% extra crit, which is very, very nice just from the raw stats alone. And then the extra Force Potencies is very, very helpful to us. Force Potency is actually one of our cooldowns here. However, if you want to take one of the more defensive legendaries here, you can take Ballast Point. Personally, though, I just don't like it as much. It's not as fun. So that's why I don't run it. It's not as fun to me. But if you want to, go ahead. I hold no ill will towards you if you want the extra tanking stats. All right? Combat styles. A lot of the combat styles here are actually pretty good. So let's talk about your options here and then run from there. All right? For single target, Antagonizing Debris is fantastic. It's going to make your Cascading Debris really, really powerful. It's good for single target. For AoE, though, you're going to take Change Cascade, which is going to make your Cascading Debris a bunch of AoE, which is just more AoE damage, which we already have a lot of in the spec. So it's pretty good. All right? Moving the line here. All 3 of these options are perfectly viable. I personally like Energize Project. Just the extra crit damage on our project is more sustainable, which is really nice for us. If you're questing, I can see Spinning Kick being really good for you for the extra CC on standard and weak targets and just a fair bit of damage. Or you can take Force Magnetism if you want the extra movement speed. It's kind of up to you, so pick your poison. Moving up here to the wards. The Kinetic Ward is very rarely broken by damage. You almost never see it broken. It more just like falls off. So personally, the second half of all these ward little utilities here are pretty much useless. So if focusing on the front end here, I personally really like Twilight Ward. Giving the extra cooldown reduction on Force Potency is very, very nice for us. It's one of our rare general mitigation defensive cooldowns, so I like it. All right? I like it. Moving the line here, Battle Readiness is mandatory. Take it every single time. If you don't, you're throwing. Personally, I like Fade moving up here. The extra cooldown reduction on Force Cloak is really helpful to us, especially when we're taking the 2 cloaks tactical. You can swap between Kinetic Surge if you want the extra movement speed, especially in like single target fights, or if you're doing big AoE cleave, you can go with Lambast, especially if you're questing. Perfectly useful to you. Pick either. It's kind of up your alley. All right? Kind of in the same vein here, up in 68, I personally like Force Wave. I think it's the most useful in general content. It's not exactly useful in boss fights. However, you can swap to like a Cleaving Cut for the little 5% DR. It's okay. It beats a poke in the eye, especially on like those long single target boss fights. However, I personally like the mobility or the ability to reposition mobs through Force Wave. Sometimes you notice CC, you can take Force Lift. It's kind of up to you. Again, there's a lot of good options here and situations when all these utilities are going to be very useful. But just for now, I still like Force Wave. All right? And then finally, Cloak Resilience is kind of mandatory. So it's kind of a letdown. All right? So let's talk about tanking really quickly. As the tank, you are the bulwark for your team. All right? It is your job to get hit in the face as much as humanly possible. And we make sure the boss is hitting us in the face by turning on our target of target. So if you go into your interface editor here, boop, make sure this little target has been enabled, and that way you can tell who your target is targeting. So that way, if they're turned around and hitting your healer, it'll let you know very quickly, right? So for example, I can tell right now this operations training dummy isn't hitting me. That's sad. Let's change that. If I taunt him, now, I can tell the training dummy is hitting me, which is good, exactly where I want him to be as the tank. All right? So make sure you have that target turned on. To make sure that we're the ones getting hit in the face by the boss, we need to build threat. Almost everything in the game that you do will build threat, but the most obvious way to build a whole lot of threat is by doing damage. So let's talk about our damaging abilities very quickly. The ones we're going to be hitting are on cooldown, are Slow Time and Force Breach. They're both massive AoE abilities, and they both generate a fair bit of threat. All right, Slow Time in particular will make the target weakened, which will essentially reduce its damage by 5%, which is pretty fantastic. You can see here, boop, haha. Now it's going to reduce all melee and ranged attacks by 5%. So it's a flat DR you give to yourself. In a similar vein, Force Breach applies another debuff here called Unsteady, which is going to reduce the accuracy of melee and ranged attacks. So they're going to hit you less often, they're going to hit you for less damage. It's pretty fantastic. We want to be smashing these pretty much on cooldown, regardless if it's single target or if it's multi-target. They generate a whole lot of threat. Hit them pretty much 24/7. All right? All right. In terms of following up, when we're not smashing Slow Time and Force Breach on cooldown, we will be hitting Double Strike as a general filler. All right? Now, when you hit Double Strike or anytime you use a melee attack on a target, a couple things have a chance of happening. You have the chance of making your Shadow Strike start to glow, boop, which you can use and then do a whole bunch of damage with. It's very nice. You also have a chance of making your Project automatically crit, right? So you see Project here and Shadow Strike, both have a chance to start glowing. When they start glowing, hit them. It's really that simple. I wish it was more complex than that. It's really not. All right? It's really not. When they glow, hit the buttons. Additionally, you're going to notice here that Cascading Debris is starting to glow. When it starts to glow, boop, we hit it. All right? When it's glowing, it's going to build up to 4 stacks of this little DR of Shadow Protection. It's not a whole lot of defense if we're being honest about it, but beats a poke in the eye. It's going to do a little bit more damage, so it's good. When it glows, hit it. All right? But what makes it glow? I'm glad you asked. Every time you use a Project and you use a Slow Time, you're going to slowly build these stacks of Harnessed Shadows. Once you get to 3 stacks, you can see here Project, boop, 3 stacks, starts to glow. Then you use your Cascading Debris at 3 stacks, and you should be ready to roll. All right? All right. I wish there was more that I could be telling you, but frankly, there's not. Just smash Slow Time and Force Breach on cooldown, fill with Double Strike, and then when the buttons glow, hit them. It's really that easy. I wish that there was more I could be telling you. There's not. It just kind of is what it is. All right? All right. If you ever get into a situation where you're doing big AoE, there's a bunch of mobs around you, which happens a lot, and say like a Flashpoint, just spam Slow Time and Force Breach, and then Whirling Blow your way to victory over and over and over again. I wish it was more complex than that. It's not. All right? If you're taking the Chain Cascade, or whatever, Morph here, whatever you want to call it, you can also fill with Cascading Debris, but frankly, just Slow Time, Force Breach, and then Whirling Blow, and you should be ready to go. All right? All right. So, beyond just doing damage in this spec, which as we just discussed is very, very straightforward, all right? We do have other abilities that will generate a whole lot of threat in the form of our Force Pull. Force Pull is not really a taunt, like it doesn't behave like a taunt, but it generates a boatload of threat, all right? We want to be using our Force Pull basically every time we open up on a boss, because that way we're going to start off with a massive spike in threat that hopefully the DPS monkeys can't pull off of us with, all right? So even if the boss isn't movable like this, I'm still going to generate a whole lot of threat on the target, even if I don't actually pull him to me, all right? Force Pull, very nice ability for generating a whole lot of threat very, very quickly, all right? All right. But sometimes doing damage and using Force Pull isn't enough. Sometimes like AP Power Tech is going to open up and do their entire opening burst and pull off of you. Sometimes there'll be like a Deception Sin that thinks it's really cool to have his hotkey like bound to his thumb for taunt. So to get around that, we have taunts of our own, all right? We have 2 taunts in the form of our Mind Control and our Mass Mind Control. It does exactly what it says. First mind control, single target, controls one person, makes him attack you for 6 seconds. We'll talk about the extra benefits later. Mass mind control affects everyone in the area and says, hey, come attack me for 6 seconds. Additionally, in terms of actual game mechanics, if you fall behind and then you use taunt, it will automatically put your threat to be the highest in the raid. All right, so you get the initial 6 seconds of, yes, I have taunted you, the boss is now attacking me for 6 seconds, and then it gives you a little jump start and regenerating all that threat to make sure that the boss like keeps attacking you. All right. So there's your 2 taunts: mind control, mass mind control. Boop, fantastic. The final ability that we have here is our guard. Now, guard is very useful for helping people reduce the damage that they take, which is obviously very helpful on the surface. So say I want to guard Lana Bay Nico right here and say, hey, Lana, you're now taking 50% less damage. Half that damage is going to be transferred over to me. That way, if she's like a melee monkey, she's going to take a whole lot less damage. Additionally, though, she's going to generate 25% less threat. All right? So this is a way that you can kind of minimize the danger of a DPS that just has a huge schlong and might be pulling threat off of you. Slap a guard on them. All right? The actual damage reduction in PvE, frankly, isn't that useful, but it's very critical to make sure that you maintain top threat by reducing the threat that the biggest DPS is going to be generating. All right? So don't slap it on your healers in PvE. Slap it on a DPS that has either a whole bunch of gear, or if you install star parts, that's actually doing all the damage, right? All right, good. I'm glad we had this talk. In PvP, though, please do not just slap your guard on one target and call it a day. Say I have my guard on the lovely Lana Beniko here, and Theron decides that he's going to take all the damage in the world. I'm currently not helping him. Your job as a tank in PvP is to be swapping your guard around to make sure that the person that's currently taking the damage is going to be guarded and then take a lot less damage, all right? That's kind of your entire role as a tank, so please swap your guard around depending on who is taking damage. Your players will appreciate you a lot more, all right? Good, all right. So those are the basic tools that we have to maintain threat, doing damage, high threat abilities like force pull, whoop, taunting to immediately give us threat and immediately make the target attack us, and guard to reduce the threat that our other players will generate. But our job as a tank isn't just to like generate threat and take the damage, right? We also need to be minimizing the damage that we take, all right? But how do we do that? Well, as a shadow, we actually have a very low amount of natural mitigation. All right, our armor isn't that high compared to like a shield tech. So what we have though is this little ability here called Kinetic Ward. You see, our primary defense against taking damage is going to be shielding damage with these stats down here. Your shield chance and shield absorption are your two most important stats, all right? Shield chance says you have a 43% chance to actually shield damage, and then the shield absorption tells you how much of that damage will be absorbed. So I get hit, I have a 43% chance to get hit for, say, 100% damage. I'm sorry, if I'm going to get hit for 100 damage, right, I have a 43% chance to reduce that damage by 63%, right? So then I only get hit for like 70 damage, which is pretty helpful, right? We want to be keeping this shield chance as high as possible. That's why we throw so many of our stats into shield. But we have an ability here that we want to maintain on us at all times called Kinetic Ward. All right? Kinetic Ward is mandatory to have you at all times because what it does, if you see here, it's going to increase our shield chance by like 20%. So you can see right here, our shield chance is 43%, boop, increased by 18% up to 61%. That's a lot of damage that you're going to no longer take because you have your Kinetic Ward up. All right? Let's talk about the fundamentals of what Kinetic Ward is actually doing. You can see here, when I hit Kinetic Ward, you get 15 of these stacks of Kinetic Ward. Now, every time you shield damage, there is a chance that the stack will go down. All right? And every time this stack goes down, you'll actually gain percentage of absorption. So let's slow that down very quickly. We talked before where this number of shield chance goes up because we have Kinetic Ward on. The more times we shield damage, the shield absorption number will also increase. All right? All right, now this actually resets though every time we use our Kinetic Ward. So if I build 7 stacks of our extra absorption because we lost all these Kinetic Wards, if I hit Kinetic Ward again, that absorb chance is gone. All right, so in theory, you want to be juggling trying to let your Kinetic Ward fall as low as possible and then refreshing it before it wears off. But that's a whole lot of work. All right, I know that the way I just described it sounds like lunacy, like trying to balance not letting your Kinetic Ward fall off, letting it reactivating at the 11th hour, trying to deal with your absorb chance. No. You can basically forget all of what I just said about the absorb chance because we're going to be smashing Kinetic Ward on cooldown. All right, and the primary reason we're doing this, especially if you're like looking up a guide for Sin tanking on the internet and like you're just trying to dabble into it, you need to have the shield chance up at all times. 3 months down the road, you can start worrying about min-maxing your shield chance and your shield absorbs and trying to reapply Kinetic Ward at the right time. But for right now, literally smash it on cooldown because you need that shield chance. All right? If you let this wear off, you're going to get your cheeks clapped in. And then you're going to blame me. All right? A lot of the very talented tanks that I know still smash it pretty much on cooldown out of the fear that they'll forget about it. It's one less thing to manage. Literally just smash Kinetic Ward on cooldown and maintain essentially a permanent 20% shield chance. It's just easier that way, and you're getting basically all the benefits without any of the downside. You can optimize it later on down the road, but like, don't worry about it. All right? All right. Now that we've discussed the primary way we're going to be mitigating damage by having our shield chance be relatively high, we need to talk about damage types in SWTOR because it does matter for a lot of our abilities. All right? All right. There are essentially 3 types of damage in SWTOR. The first is melee ranged. This is white damage. So like if I attack the target and you see the white numbers, that is our melee ranged damage. Melee ranged damage is white damage. It is anytime you are shot with a blaster or stabbed with a saber. All right, that's the easy way to understand melee ranged. If it's a weapon attack, boop, 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 that's melee ranged. All right, if you're getting punched by a bunch of mobs, that's melee ranged. If you're getting shot at by a blaster, that's melee ranged. Buddy, we like melee ranged damage because we have a chance to actually completely avoid melee ranged damage, all right? If you have a good enough defense or good enough defensive tank stats, you can dodge melee ranged attacks entirely. And even the attacks that you don't dodge, you can actually reduce the damage that they do. Melee ranged damage is probably our best friend, all right? We love to see melee range damage. The other type of damage is force tech damage. This is not universally a rule. Most of the time, if it's a big red circle on the ground, it's force tech damage. All right, force tech damage is anytime you are hit by the force or anytime that you are hit with like a grenade or fire on the ground, etc. You can kind of assume that if it's a big red circle, it's force tech. It's also, say if you're in PvP, you can see the colors are exploding with yellow. That's force tech damage. It's anytime you're getting hit by like a thundering blast from a sorcerer or say a cascading debris from a tank, right? If it's a force ability, if it's a grenade, if it's an attack ability, it's yellow damage. It can only be reduced, all right? You cannot dodge this damage. You have to straight up reduce it or use a snazzy little cooldown that we have, all right? That's the second type of damage. The final type of damage is internal damage. That's like bleeds and stuff. You kind of just eat those. All right? All right. So wrapping up one more time. White damage, melee range damage. It's all kind of the same thing. Anytime you're shot with a blaster or stabbed by a saber or punched with a fist, you can dodge it or you can reduce it. Yellow damage, force tech damage. Anytime you're hit by a grenade or fire or anything standing on the ground, that's yellow damage. It cannot be dodged. It can only be reduced. And then the dots we just kind of eat. All right? It'll come up in a hot second. But for right now, if you use those terms in your raid group, you'll sound like relatively smart or like smarter than like the average DPS monkey. So just like have that in your back pocket. All right? All right. Now let's talk about our actual defensive cooldowns. Our favorite cooldowns are cooldowns that work with all types of damage. All right? So for example, Battle Readiness is a fantastic little ability here. It's going to reduce the damage that we take by 25%, which is Chef's Kiss, fantastic. It's also going to immediately heal us for 15% of our health bar, right? So it works on all types of damage. It will reduce the damage you take by 25%. It's awesome. If you don't know what type of damage you're taking, Battle Readiness will help you with it. All right? All right. It's probably my favorite cooldown. It's fun. It also just has a good little icon there. So we're all about it. We're all about it. The next defensive cooldown that we have is actually our Force Potency. All right? Force Potency on its own does grant a little bit of crit for us, which is nice. You know, it helps us do a little bit of extra threat, but it's also going to help out with our shield absorption chance. So if you see here, when we scroll down to our defensive stats, my shield chance is now at a menacing 61%. If we use our Force Potency, our shield absorption is going to jump 30% up to 66%. So now we have an even higher chance or an even higher reduction on the damage that we shield. It's a fantastic little ability. Again, shielding damage will protect you from all different types of damage. It's going to reduce damage just flat out. Force Potency is a fantastic little ability. It's great for reducing all kinds of damage. All right? So those are our two general purpose defensive cooldowns. Again, that's Battle Readiness, 25% DR, big 60k heal, very nice. And then Force Potency for the extra shield absorb chance, which is just generally very, very useful to us. The two abilities here that people don't understand most often are going to be our deflection and our resilience. Our deflection increases our ranged and melee defenses by 50%. So that's melee range damage. That's white damage. So anytime you're getting shot, anytime you're getting stabbed, anytime that someone's trying to punch you in the face, deflection will help you dodge those attacks. All right? It's a great ability anytime that someone is hitting you with a lightsaber. All right? Anytime there's a massive pack of mobs standing around you, pop that deflection. It's very nice. But it won't save you from things like standing on the ground, right? It's not going to save you from the fire. It only works on abilities that are, shooting you. It does provide a small benefit here, though, because of this pulsating force. You can see this massive little AoE around here. This is going to reduce the force tech damage of nearby enemies. So it will, somewhat reduce the damage that you take from force tech. Not that much, though. All right? Not that much. This is much more useful anytime you're getting shot or stabbed. That's that melee range damage coming back into effect. All right? If it's on the ground, it's not going to do you any good. But if you're getting shot, deflection, fantastic little ability. On the other side of the coin here, we have our resilience. Resilience only will make you pretty much invincible to force tech attacks for 3 seconds. All right, it has a very short cooldown, but it doesn't work against melee range, right? If you're getting shot, it's not going to help you. If you're getting stabbed, it's not going to help you. But if there's something standing on the ground that you need to not take damage from, very, very useful. All right, so resilience only useful for abilities that are on the ground. It will also purge dots that are on you. So say you're in hypothetically a Nephra, right? Who would ever do such a thing? If you were in a Nephra and you need to purge a dot, resilience, fantastic way to get rid of those pesky little dots. All right? All right. So wrapping up, recapping real quick. Deflection, getting shot, boom, deflection, fantastic. If you're standing in something you shouldn't be standing in, resilience, very, very useful. Additionally, we have our Force Cloak when combined with our Cloak of Resilience here will give us 2 seconds of resilience every time we activate it. Now this is nice for cheesy mechanics. If you're standing in a red circle you shouldn't be standing in, boop, pop that Force Cloak, you get 2 seconds of essentially Force Tech immunity. Very, very nice. However, this will drop all of our threat, which isn't ideal as a tank here. So if you ever do need to cloak out, make sure you have a taunt immediately following that. So you go cloak and then taunt to make sure that you can reestablish threat on the boss. And then it's probably helpful to use a force pull as well, or another high threat ability like slow time or force breach to really start to generate that threat again. It's a great if things go wrong, cheese with me ability. So use it as you see fit. Just try not to lose aggro of the boss because of it. That'd be bad. All right? That'd be bad. So, one more time to make sure that we're all on the same page here. General purpose, battle readiness, and force potency, both going to help you with all types of damage. Deflection is going to be useful anytime you're getting shot or stabbed. That's that melee range damage right there. And then resilience is for any time you're getting hit with the force, like a sorcerer hard casting into you or standing in a red circle you shouldn't be standing in. Resilience will help you out there. All right? Okay. Man, these tank guides are long. I'm so sorry. I'm so dreadfully sorry. Let's just recap. Let's recap very quickly, and then we should be on our way. All right? Doing damage. Smash, slow time, force breach on cooldown, fill with double strike until either a shadow strike glows or a project grows. Boop, hit them. Hit the glowing buttons when they glow. Essentially, that's all you kind of need to know. General purpose defensive cooldowns, battle readiness, and force potency. Very nice. Deflection, getting shot or stabbed. Resilience, if you're getting tunneled with the force or with a tech attack like a grenade or a red circle, and you should be ready to rock and roll. Now, as a tank, life isn't fair. All right, you're kind of expected to know all the boss mechanics before you jump into them. Please, if you're going into a fight, you don't know what you're doing, ask. Someone in the group has probably tanked the boss before. They can give you like a general purpose guideline for it. Additionally, you have a back pocket ability here. If things go wrong, you blame the healer because no one really knows what the tank mechanics are, and you can just say that you died to damage. All right, and what are they gonna do? Find another tank? Nah, bump that. All right, tanking is already a thankless job, and people will really only notice if you screw something up royally. Otherwise, just like say, "Oh, healer, heal me through this," and then you should be ready to rock and roll. It's kind of all I have to say about tanking here as a KC. Any thoughts from you, Duke? Any thoughts from you? No thoughts. Head empty. Head full of love. Is that you? Is that you, full of love and barks and woofs? Yes, it is him. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. Have any comments or questions, complaints, concerns, conundrums, leave them down in the comments below. I'll get back to you when I feel like it. Take care. Oh, and before I forget, huge shout out to Tran for helping me make this guide. He basically walked me through all things that I kind of knew previously, but he laid them out in a very easy to understand way. So thank you, Tran. If you guys haven't seen his stuff, check out the Q dodging mechanics videos he features very heavily for being a toxic piece of work. Thanks, dude. I appreciate you.